Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Pretty Pink Posh is having a fun blog hop to celebrate their brand new Christmas release. For more information on the blog hop, be sure to head over to my blog. There's lots of inspiration and a chance to win a Pretty Pink Posh gift card. In my video today, I'll be using the new Love from Afar die set. This is a really fun set, and I'll be creating 3 different cards using this set. For card number 1, I have some craft cardstock, and I cut it out using the Stitch Torn Rectangles die set. I'm adding a lovely gold metallic splatter to the background using some watercolor. And for a little extra detail, I'll also splatter on some white ink. I'm using Winsor & Newton white ink. I prefer using this over white ink pads since it has a bolder white color. Sometimes with the white ink pads, the white color sort of fades into the background. I've already gone ahead and cut out all of the die cut pieces. Use some light blue cardstock for the water, and I cut out 2 more earth pieces from some white cardstock. I'll layer all of those together, and this will add just that little extra dimension. I'll place an acrylic block on top for some added weight while the glue dries. So I'll set that aside and start working on the sentiment. This card will feature the sentiment, Peace on Earth. I cut out the banner from some white shimmer cardstock. I've already die cut the sentiment from some dark blue cardstock. I've left all of the letters inside the die, and I've also kept the negative piece. I'll put some tacky tape on the front, flip it over. Now I'll add all of the letters back into the negative piece. They are fairly small letters. If you want to glue them on one at a time, you can definitely do that. I find this a little easier. It takes a little bit of time adding in all those die cut letters. It's basically like doing a jigsaw puzzle but upside down, since I'm doing the back side of the letters. Once I have all of the letters in place, I'll gently rub my finger to make sure all those die cut letters are attached to the tacky tape. Then I'll lift it up from the negative piece. Now I'll put glue on the back of the letters, and I flipped around the edge of the tape to attach it to my desk. I found this was the easiest way to put glue on the back. When I was trying to hold the tape, the letters were moving all over the place. And by doing the sentiment this way, the letters and words are still spaced out evenly. Now I'll flip it over and adhere it onto the white banner. And the banner does have a slight curve. You can easily curve the tacky tape so you can match that curve of the banner. Now I'll set aside the sentiment so I can add on the rest of the pieces of the earth. There are 2 pieces, and I cut both of them out of green cardstock. I'll put glue on the back and adhere the continents onto the earth. I have 1 more small piece to adhere. To help stay organized while I was making cards, I stored all of the die cut pieces in one of scrapbook.com's stack and sort trays. They're very useful, and you can stack up several trays together. Next, I'll add thin foam dimension on the back of the sentiment. I'm using Honeybee Stamp's white foam strips. I'll remove the release paper and add the sentiment on the center of earth. Then I'll flip over the earth, put glue on the back, and add the tails on the banner, putting them slightly lower than the sentiment. I also cut out 2 red hearts, and I'll adhere them above the word peace, overlapping them slightly. It does help to have a pair of reverse tweezers to hold the small die cut pieces, putting just that tiny bit of barely art glue on the back and then adhering them in place. My background is all dry. I'll put glue on the back and adhere it onto some light brown pearlescent cardstock. It almost matches the craft color, but it has that beautiful pearlescent shimmer. Then I'll flip over this piece, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 5.5 inches by 4.25 inches. I did place a large acrylic block on top for some added weight while the glue dried. Now I'll put glue on the back of the earth and adhere it on the center of the card. For a final finishing touch, I'm using a white gel pen and adding some tiny polka dots on each of the hearts. So there is my finished card, and since I love making multiples, I did make 2. Now moving on to card design number 2, and I'll be using the same Love from Afar die set. This time I'm using pattern paper. I have 2 different older collections from 49 in Marcotte, Shimmer, and also Tidal Wave. If they are still available, I will have a link in the description box. The background of my card features pattern paper from the Tidal Wave collection. I cut it down to an A2 size panel. I'm adding a little extra detail to the background using Pretty Pink Posh's Starry Background stencil and some pretty metallic gold ink. I'm using a dome blender brush and lightly pressing gold ink through the stencil. So now the background will have a very subtle star design. Even though the very center of the background will be covered up with a die cut image, I still stenciled the entire background. I'll also use some of the leftover ink on the brush and add it to the edge of the panel. So now the card will have some beautiful gold metallic ink all along the outside edge. I have my panel on Waffle Flower's mini stencil mat. It washes easily and it helps keep my craft area clean. Next, I'll use some gold watercolor paint and add a lovely splatter all over the background. So even though the background is pattern paper, I added some extra detail with a stencil and gold watercolor. I'll set the background aside to dry and start assembling the earth. I cut out the water and land from pattern paper. Just glue those 3 pieces together. After adhering the final piece, I'll place an acrylic block on top for some added weight while the glue dries. I've already assembled the sentiment, Joy to the World. I used the same technique that I did for the first card. I just decided to do it off screen to save time on the video. This card will also be featuring the 2 little doves. I used more pattern paper, just a very light blue color, and I want them to pop just a little bit more against the background, so I'm adding some teal ink on the edge of the tail and also the wings. I'm just using leftover ink on my teal blending brush. Then I'll put glue on the back of the bottom portion of each of the wings and adhere them in place. Once the wings are adhered, I'll lightly curl up the end of each of the wings for a little more dimension. Now that my background is dry, I'll flip it over, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. I think the pattern on the back side is just as pretty as the pattern on the front. It's a good thing the paper pack includes multiples of the same design. I've already put foam dimension on the back of the sentiment. I'll remove the release paper and adhere it on the center of the earth. Now I'll flip it over and add thin foam dimension on the back side. I started to add the foam dimension, remembered I need to put the tail of the banner down first, so I'll glue those in place. Now I'll add thin foam squares on the back side, and I did cut the squares in half. That way I could get them easily around the curve of the circle. Then I'll add a few foam squares in the center, that way there isn't one area that sags. Now I'll remove the release paper and adhere the earth on the center of my card. Next I'll add some foam dimension on the back of the 2 doves, and I am using some slightly thicker foam dimension. I'll adhere one dove on the right side and the other on the left. I'm putting them above the banner and still slightly outside of the earth. For a little bit of sparkle, I'm adding some Nuvo glitter drops on the end of the tail and wings of each of the doves. This is the Silver Crystals color. And I'm adding just a very small amount to the very edge of the wings and tails. Once it dries, it'll have a beautiful sparkle finish. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For the second card, I did make the stars a little darker. Not sure which version I prefer. I think they both turned out beautiful. I really like this die set. Now moving on to card design number 3, and this one will be a little different. Using the Stitch Torn rectangle die from Pretty Pink Posh, I cut out a background panel. This is some more pattern paper from 49 and Marcotte. I have foam dimension on the back. I'll remove the release paper and add it to some silver pearlescent cardstock. I cut out the main earth shape from some white cardstock, light green cardstock, and also light blue cardstock. I cut the green and blue in half, and I'm adhering the 2 pieces onto the white background. The bottom portion will be the water and the top is the land. So the bottom has the waves, and the top portion, the little lines on the background, are the opposite direction, sort of like little mountains. I do have a gap between the 2 pieces, but that's okay, it'll be covered up. I used some white shimmer cardstock for the sentiment banner, put foam dimension on the back, and I'll adhere it in the center of my green and blue circle. So now you can see I covered up that small gap. I'll flip over the circle, put glue on the back, and attach the right and left side tails of the banner. Now I'll put thin foam squares on the back of the circle. Again, I did cut them in half so I have good coverage all over the back. I'll put a few full squares in the center, also adding some thinner foam dimension behind the tails of the banner. Now I'll remove the release paper and add the die cut on the center of the card. I have a little bowl full of lots of die cut pieces to add to this card. The die set also includes 2 different sizes of trees. There's the tiny piece for the trunk, and I love the top portion of the trees has a fun stitch detail. I'll be adding 7 of the trees above the sentiment banner. So first I'll attach the trunk to each of the trees. The card will also feature 2 of the doves, and I cut out 2 hearts. With all of the teeny tiny pieces, this is another time that it's useful to have a pair of reverse tweezers. And I love my reverse tweezers. They're made by EK Success. It's this beautiful pink color, and they have a very sharp point at the end. Some of the tweezers have more of a blunt tip, and it's harder to pick up those tiny pieces. So I prefer to have the very sharp tip. Although be careful, you can easily stab your finger. Trust me, I know. I feel like I'm constantly injuring my hands. You'll see little cuts and scrapes. And then last month I ended up crushing my pinky finger. You can't see it, but underneath my nail I do have the marking from when I crushed my finger. I'm just thankful I didn't break my finger. Once I've adhered the trunks to all 7 trees, I'll start adding them above the sentiment banner. I'm putting a large tree in the very center. Then I'll add 2 shorter trees on the right and left side, and I am tucking them underneath the very center tree. I'll add 2 more tall trees, one on the right, one on the left, and then finally 2 short trees, one on the right and one on the left. So now I have a little forest of 7 trees sitting above the sentiment banner. Next, I'll add a dove on the right and left side of the sentiment banner. And I did use pattern paper for the 2 doves. It's a very light blue color, similar to the previous card. And I'll also add 2 red hearts, one in front of each of the doves. So I'm leaving the very center of the sentiment banner open, and this is where I'll add the sentiment love. It's from the die piece that has love from afar, but I'm only adding the word love. I'll first lay out all of the letters, trying to get them evenly spaced. Then one at a time, I'll put glue on the back and adhere the sentiment love in place. I'll start with the outer letters first, doing E, then L, then I'll do the 2 center letters. And they're not perfect, but I think I have them mostly centered. After adhering the sentiment, I'll add some tiny little stars, and I cut these out from silver holographic cardstock. The stars are part of the die set, and you can use them to decorate the trees for Christmas, but I thought they would be perfect as embellishments. They are very tiny. I'll first add a small drop of Barely Art glue, then I'll use an embellishment wand to pick up the stars and press them in place. I'll put 2 stars in the upper left-hand corner and 3 in the lower right-hand corner. There are 2 different sizes of the stars. I put 1 of each size in the upper left-hand corner, a large and 2 small stars in the lower right-hand corner. I really like the look of glitter on the doves from the previous card, so I'll do the same thing for this card, using the same silver crystals glitter color from Nuvo. Then for a final finishing touch, I'm using a clear glitter brush and adding a little bit of sparkle to the red hearts. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. Now here's another look at the 6 cards I made using the Love from Afar die set from Pretty Pink Posh. I love this set. It was fun to find 3 different ways to use it. It's great for Christmas cards, but you could also use it year-round. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. And don't forget to head over to my blog to check out the blog hop, more inspiration, and a chance to win a Pretty Pink Posh gift card. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.